Welcome back to Top 10 Tunes. Today we're going to be looking at the top 10 Metallica albums of all time. Coming in at number 10 is 2003's Saint Anger. This may be a controversial choice as this album has been maligned and ridiculed for both its inclusion of alternative metal and nu metal aesthetics, as well as the idiosyncratic album production, the most prominent example being the open and ringing snare drum sound. However, in retrospect, Saint Anger provided an outlet for Metallica to return to their heavier musical roots, while also exploring some more vulnerable lyrical content on songs like All Within My Hands. While many will still view Saint Anger as an outlier in Metallica's career, this album was integral to the band's development and in steering them back towards a traditional thrash metal sound. At number 9 is Metallica's definitive 90s statement, Load. Often remembered as their era of a new band logo, short haircuts, and eyeliner, this drastically undermines the experimentation and success Metallica achieved with Load. Songs like Ain't My Bitch and King Nothing both retain the group's heavy inkling while also transitioning to a more mainstream hard rock sound, while Until It Sleeps and Bleeding Me shift to a more complex dynamic and don't shy away from a more hard-on-the-sleeve lyrical delivery. Ultimately, the biggest departure for the band was on the song Mama Said, which delves into country territory. While this song isn't the most popular amongst Metallica fans, it represents the band's ability to transcend typical metal songwriting and to stretch their creative muses to whatever that leads. Load represents Metallica's confirming their ability to work as a mainstream rock act. Arriving at number 8 is the cover album Garage Inc. In the instance of any other band, a cover album wouldn't normally be indicative of a band's overall sound or career trajectory. In the case of Metallica, however, cover songs have been integral, and many of the tracks on Garage Inc. have been inseparable from their catalog. Earlier in Metallica's career, they would frequently perform cover songs, but not blatantly disclose the original artist. This can be felt in their recordings of Die, Die, My Darling, It's Electric, and the Merciful Fate medley. There are both covers of Misfits, Diamond Head, and Merciful Fate recordings, but also distinct Metallica performances. While most albums by Metallica are landmarks in their compositional and sonic development, Garage Inc. holds a purity that could only be delivered by a cover album. At number 7 is Death Magnetic. Seen as Metallica's return to form, Death Magnetic held the balance between straightforward thrash songs and longer conceptual songs. By this album, Metallica's songwriting and production flow had begun to bottle itself on their earlier records, and the individual song arrangements were heavily riff-oriented and pieced together accordingly. With the thrash metal revival being in full swing by the late 2000s, albums like Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning were being used as a framework for plenty of newer bands, so it's no coincidence that Metallica were basing their material on Death Magnetic on their earlier works and re-established themselves as the definitive thrash metal band. At number 6 is the incomparable S&M. Nowadays, symphonic metal is a well-established subgenre with its own legacy and pantheon of artists. However, Metallica's collaboration with composer and conductor Michael Kamen and the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra was a new avenue for the band to explore their more classical-leaning material, as well as providing a more theatrical bombast to their mainstream 90s output. Not only were new songs like No Leaf Clover premiered, making it more than just a typical live album, but older songs that weren't previously released as singles like Of Wolf and Man were given a prominent showcase in this orchestral setting. S&M would be revisited decades later, helping to cement its legacy as Metallica's most famous live album. At number 5 is Metallica's debut album, Kill 'Em All. This album helped to launch the thrash metal movement, as Exodus's Bonded by Blood wouldn't be released until 2 years later. Kill 'Em All would be the first widely distributed record of this newly developed sound, taking the sound of the new wave of British heavy metal and incorporating the speed and energy of American hardcore punk. Kill 'Em All created a fan-oriented listening and concert experience that has endeared them to their fanbase to this day. Songs like Seek and Destroy, Hit the Lights, and Whiplash have been canonized within the heavy metal community at large, and these songs still get performed by the band to this day. While their musicianship would evolve by leaps and bounds on their following records, Kill 'Em All announced Metallica as a band with promise and vast potential. Coming in at number 4 is their sophomore effort, Ride the Lightning. Going from Kill Them All to Ride the Lightning only took place over a year, but their second release, Metallica, was way beyond their Bay Area thrash roots. They were being produced by Flemming Ramison and were leaning harder on their darker yet still melodic influences. Songs like Fight Fire with Fire and Ride the Lightning keep speed at the forefront, while Creeping Death and For Whom the Bell Tolls became instant classics. But it was on Fade to Black that Metallica began to experiment and test the boundaries of their metal credentials. Essentially a ballad, Fade to Black is a long and sweeping composition about suicide and finds the band performing a song that's both controversial for their fans and the mainstream public. Ride the Lightning showed that Metallica was a band with staying power and that thrash metal was a genre that was evolving. Taking our number 3 spot is the progressive thrash opus And Justice for All. In no means did Metallica intend to be related to progressive rock or progressive metal, but by stretching their thrash riffing and long-form songwriting to their limits, they inevitably relied on odd time signatures and conceptual lyrics to create this politically scathing album. And then there's the production. The bass is barely audible, and the mix is dominated by sterile, in-your-face guitar and drums. Yet, this sound would be further crafted by industrial musicians to create the next big metal subgenre in the 90s, industrial metal. After And Justice for All, Metallica would steer away from competing in speed and complexity with their contemporaries in favor of morphing into a more streamlined and ultimately more mainstream rock sound. But this album accidentally aligned itself with the industrial defranchised, the forever thrashy, and the progressive intelligence all in one record. At number 2 is the Black Album, simply named Metallica. Their mainstream breakthrough album, The Black Album, was a culmination of Metallica's evolution into heavy music juggernaut that they are recognized as today. Partnering with acclaimed producer Bob Rock, Metallica's sound was simplified and widened sonically, which allowed much of their music to be more palatable on the radio and to become more accessible to a more pop-oriented audience. Today, songs like Enter Sandman and The Unforgiven can be found in the same setting as some classic rock. Metallica's trade of speed for power can be best exemplified on Wherever May Roam and Sad But True. While the thrash metal aspects of their career aren't entirely absent, the Black Album is a sleeker packaging of this and would be the gateway for most of the public to the rest of their catalog. And our number 1 pick is the definitive thrash metal album, Master of Puppets. By their third release, Metallica had created a unique style of composing, incorporating fast chromatic guitar riffs, but also clean sweeping passages and melodic interplay. The title track and Battery are definitive thrash metal songs, but ultimately the instrumental track Orion best displays this era of the band. Largely indicative of the late bassist Cliff Burton's influences, this song develops 2 separate classical themes as both a headbanging and mid-tempo riff and a lyrical melody respectively. The dichotomy between heavy and soft had existed in Metallica's appreciation for hooks just as much as mosh pits, but being able to combine these schools of thought is what made the band special and elevated thrash metal to an art form. Master of Puppets isn't just Metallica's most complete record, but it is the touchstone for thrash metal and a watermark for heavy music. Thank you so much for watching Top 10 Tunes. Did we miss your favorite Metallica album? Be sure to include that in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.